super fun, and all about artisan cheese and more to melt your peaceful heart and toast your peaceful life. Coming to you from the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia, this is the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hey, this is Scott Hall from Peaceful Heart Farm, and you are listening to the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hello, everybody. Melanie Hall here. Hope you are doing very, very well. The conversation today and every day revolves around the value of tradition, traditional homestead living, traditional raw milk products, and artisan cheese. Topics discussed here are designed to create new perspectives and possibilities for how you might add the taste of tradition to your life. Let's get back to the quail and pickled quail eggs. So much has happened. Many changes since the last time I talked about them. 10 jars of pickled quail eggs have been completed, and so much more to talk about, especially the creamery roof. I want to take a minute and say welcome to all the new listeners. Welcome back to the veteran homestead-loving regulars who stop by the FarmCast for every episode. I appreciate all of you so very much. And I'm so excited to share with you what's going on at the farm this week. It's getting close to Christmas. Hope you're ready. Scott and I have been watching the YouTube series called The Chosen. I highly recommend it. The story so far is about Jesus' adult life, not really his birth. It's still great for watching at Christmas time, in my opinion. Second season is currently in the works. I believe filming is scheduled to be completed in February of 2021. I don't know a release date, but I'm eagerly anticipating its release. Anyway, on to the quail updates on the homestead. Last time I talked about our beautiful Japanese Coturnix quail, we were having issues with hens getting beat up really badly. And we rescued a bunch of them, put them in quarantine away from the others. One rooster was also in quarantine. Each and every one of them healed up just fine. The only problem is that we couldn't put them back in their various cages lest the same thing happen all over again. And we couldn't keep them forever in these brooder cages, brooder boxes that we had them in. So they were slated for culling. An additional blessing and or problem was that we were getting 29 or 30 eggs every day, and that's a bit too many. I mean, who knew we would be so successful in getting them to lay throughout the winter? Last year, we had zero, zip, nada for eggs throughout the entire winter. Then one day in late March, they all started laying again, as if all on cue. Okay, everybody started laying. So getting 30 eggs at a time was a giant blessing, and the more eggs we get from our quail, the less eggs we have to purchase elsewhere. So we decided to reduce the amount of quail that we had, reduce the amount of eggs that we were getting. And so before I get to the pickled quail eggs, I need to talk a little bit more about culling these hens. When you live the homestead life, there are certain choices that need to be made that are not always easy. I love our quail. I want to keep all of them. The eggs they lay are so cute and beautifully colored. However, we have to face facts and only keep what we need, and we need to give them the best life. So we were taking care of the ones that were being beat up, but we couldn't really put them back in with the others. So in the end, we ended up reducing our quail population by 12 birds. Well, actually 13, but I will get to the additional bird in a moment. So we had 6 of them in quarantine, right? And so we added 6 more. Where did we get those? Well, there were 5 hens and 1 rooster ideally in a breeding group. And so we had 3 separate cages on the bottom that had that configuration, and then we had the 2 on the penthouse top that had 2 roosters and 10 hens. All right, so we had pulled out 1 hen from the right-hand bottom cage and 4 hens from the left-hand bottom cage, and that's the 5 hens that we had. And then we pulled 1 rooster from the top right hand, and that's all the ones that we had in quarantine. So with my new experience, I realized that I couldn't stick any of those back in there. So the logical thing to do was pull out the rest of them. So there were 4 left on the bottom right. We pulled those out. So that made 10. And then there was 1 hen left in the right-hand cage, and we pulled her out. So now there's just a rooster in both of the bottom right and left cages, right? And we've got 11 birds. And then I just kind of randomly grabbed a hen, and I grabbed it out of the left-hand penthouse, and I'll tell you why. I kept getting 11 eggs over there, right? It was supposed to have been 2 roosters and 10 hens, but I was getting 11 eggs. So I pulled a random hen out from over there, and that brought us up to 12. So now on the top left and right, in the penthouse left and right, I have 1 rooster, but I have 10 hens. So what did I do? I took those 5 hens, extra hens, and put them down in the left-hand bottom cage and in the right-hand bottom cage. And so now I have 5 separate cages, and they all have 1 rooster and 5 hens, right? So that all sounds really, really good. So it made sense to do it that way. I had, by the way, the 11 hens, I had miscalculated. There was really only 1 rooster up there, right? That's why I had 11. There wasn't an extra. It was that one of the ones I thought was a rooster was actually a hen. So then everything seemed perfect there. So we processed all of those cold birds, 12 of them, immediately. And I had them in cold water overnight. There are enzymes produced in that first 24 hours. So that helps tenderize the meat. And once that process is complete, I usually package them and then freeze them in packages of 4 birds each. It's about a pound, 4 birds. However, these 12 were slated for dinner and leftovers. They ended up getting an extra day in the fridge. Now, the very next day, after doing all of this culling and rearranging and processing, and I went out the very next day to feed and water them and found another hen. It was just a slightly bloody head, and it wasn't bad. But she had definitely been abused. And this time, I didn't grab any of the other hens. I grabbed that rooster and immediately quarantined him. It had to be him. I mean, the girls were getting along fine before. They were all up together in the cage right above, but now I had a bloody head again. And the only change was putting them in with that rooster. And sure enough, the next day, her head's much better. There were no other additional injuries, and she healed up within like 3 days. And still, no other injuries. Anyway, as soon as I saw she was going to heal the very next day without that rooster in there, he got added to the dinner pot. And that's how it ended up being 13 instead of 12. We still have a few leftovers in the fridge, maybe dinner tonight. So now one cage has 5 hens with no rooster, because he was just vicious. Anyway, all 5 will still lay eggs like clockwork. I just won't be able to use those infertile eggs in the incubator. And a final kind of sad note with the quail is that yesterday I went out to feed them and found one of the hens in the penthouse on the right had died. There were 5 eggs in there, so she laid her daily egg before expiring. And this happens sometimes. There was no mark on her externally, but she had blood just inside her beak. I'm thinking something internal went wrong. I have no idea what. So one cage has a rooster and 4 hens instead of 5, and that reduces our total hens to 24. It's actually a good number, 2 dozen eggs each day. I hope the rest of them fare well enough through the rest of the winter. We will have to cull a few more to make room for new babies in the spring, but until then, lots of eggs, 24 eggs a day for the most part. And some of them will be made into pickled eggs. Let me talk about pickled quail eggs. So here's what I did. 100 of them. I boiled 100 quail eggs. That's 4 eggs over 8 dozen. And I made 10 half-pint jars of pickled quail eggs. Now, after I boiled the eggs, just boil them like you would any other boiled egg. I put them in straight vinegar overnight, 10 to 12 hours. You just leave them in the vinegar. And you've probably seen those pictures of the eggs. They're spotted. Look at the thumbnail that I have on this particular podcast, and you'll see some quail eggs. So what happens is that vinegar just sloughs off those speckled parts, and underneath is a white egg. Quail eggs are actually white, and when those eggs come out, they have like an ink that just goes all over them, and that's what makes those spots. So that stuff just kind of sloughs off the top, and then you leave the white shell becomes soft and rubbery. It was so interesting to see this happen. I'd never seen this. I don't know if it probably would happen with chicken eggs as well. So they're sitting in just regular white vinegar, and overnight, and then I could just pinch that. It was like a like a thick membrane. I could just pinch that and peel them off, and they were all perfectly peeled, which is what you want, right? They're so small, you don't want them all crumbling up. Now, to make the quail eggs, I used 3 different recipes. The basic pickling solution was similar in all of them: 2 cups of vinegar and a cup of water, and 2 to 4 tablespoons of sugar, depending on the recipe, and the salt varied a little too. And then you had different flavorings. And that amount of solution was enough for 3 jars, 3 half-pint jars, plus just a little bit. And I made 3 jars of pickled quail eggs with this solution, and then I added curry seasoning to 3 of them. There were 3 jars of eggs with that vinegar solution and a pickling spice mix and half a beet. Those are a beautiful pink egg right now. Then I did 4 jars of pickled quail eggs using apple cider vinegar in the mix instead of white vinegar. And I also added some minced garlic, but I used the same pickling spice as the previous one. So I had a white vinegar with pickling spice, and then I had apple cider vinegar with the pickling spice and garlic. Now, Scott has tasted the curry ones. In fact, he ate the whole jar, 10 of them. There's 10 little eggs in a jar. He ate all 10 of them. But I added a little extra vinegar, and I was able to do 4 jars of that last one. So in the end, I have canned 10 jars of pickled quail eggs, with plans for quite a few more over the winter. It will be a fine snack throughout the next year. So that was a good canning experience. Now, speaking of canning, I don't know if I've mentioned my apple pie jam. It's pretty simple and out of this world delicious. The other day, I was out picking up some quail feed that I'd ordered from a local supplier, and I bought another bushel of apples. The previous bushel I bought at that same place made lots of apple pie filling and a bit of apple pie jam. And there were apples galore right out there for me to pick up as I was picking up this feed. Now, this year is the first time that I've made the apple pie jam, and it was such a hit. And basically, it's an apple jam recipe with pie spices added. It's unbelievably good. It has ground cinnamon, ground cloves, ground nutmeg, and ground allspice. And a bushel of apples ended up making another 40 pint-sized jars of apple pie jam. Now, perhaps I went a little overboard with making this jam, but it was really, really fun. And I have some half pints that I made from the first bushel, and I'm selling those at the farmer's market, and I'll likely sell some of the pint jars as well. There'll still be plenty for ourselves and enough for gifts for family and friends. It's just one of those things that was so fun, I just had to do it over and over. 2 days straight with canning 2 batches of 10 pints each. Now you know what to expect out of a bushel of apples. Plan accordingly. Now let's move on to the animals. Most of the cows are still grazing on grass. It's amazing. No hay for the main herd yet. We are near the end of December. The plan is progressing nicely. Most of the year, there will be no hay expenses for these girls. It's a giant step forward in our homestead plan. And everyone is doing well out there. And just last night, a new possibility arose to add another new bred heifer or a young cow to our herd. This time, if it works out, we will be adding another purebred Normandy to our homestead. We're excited. It will be a very, very long trip if we do it, but it'll be so worth it. These young ladies are hard to come by, and we hope to remedy that in the future by having lots and lots of heifers for ourselves, as well as having some to sell to others. I can't tell you how many people have asked me if we have any heifers for sale. They want them for their homestead milk cow, because just like us, when we got them, they're a dual breed cow. And so they have to have a calf every year to produce that milk, and then you have a beef cow to raise. So it's such a win-win situation. A lot of people are looking for these beautiful cows, and there just aren't that many heifers available, especially that have the milking genetics. I'll keep you posted on how this new development progresses. And if you're one of those looking for a Normandy for a dual-purpose milk cow for your homestead, drop me an email and I'll let you know who to contact because he has quite a few. Now, the donkeys all got their hooves trimmed. Johnny was really, really difficult. I think more difficult than he has ever been. He was constantly kicking and jerking and moving around, and when Scott got to the last hoof, he just laid down. It was a very trying experience for all concerned, but it did get done. On the other hand, Coco, who used to be really, really bad, she's getting used to it, and she did really well. And as always, Daisy and Sweet Pea, they just stand there. It's old hat for them. And I'm glad to see that accomplished. And all the donkeys have their winter coats. They're like little fuzzballs. I was going out the driveway yesterday and I noticed the sheep are looking nice and fat. I'm talking about the breeding group that's out in the front pasture. They look really round, but it's too early for that to be pregnancy showings. Sheep gestation is only about 5 months, and they're not even 2 months along. It is that last month that they get really big and round. Now, these girls are just really healthy and strong. It's good to see them doing so well. Now, let me move on to the creamery, the roof. Oh my gosh, such a big job it is. And what a job it was to get the material figured out. And of course, it was really expensive. And then we had to get the material here and get it unloaded. And it's these huge, long, 3-foot wide and 27-foot long pieces, the big ones. We got a lot of the short ones. I'll talk about that in a minute. But just to get it here and get it unloaded. And it was not without issue. And then the wind contributed to some additional damage to the material. Scott is out there right now finishing one run of metal on the lower end of the loafing shed. So this morning it was quite the ordeal to get the last pieces delivered and transported from the road back to the building site. Scott had quite an elaborate setup in place, and it would have worked beautifully if his tractor had had a little more toughness. Unfortunately, it was just a little bit too small for the task. The metal was bundled all in one piece and was delivered on a tow truck, like a car tow truck. Because the pieces are so long, this was the only way kind of trailer that we had to get it to us. The Department of Transportation rules for how much can hang off of a trailer made this job much harder to accomplish. So we hired this tow truck that was long enough to hold these pieces. So the tow truck arrived this morning with the roof metal, and Scott had our hay trailer rigged up so the bundle could be lifted up off of the truck. Just lift it straight up off of the truck, and then the tow truck would drive out from under the bundle, and Scott would back his hay trailer under it and then lower the bundle onto the trailer. Right? Sound like a good plan. And he had already tested his ability to drive it back to the building site because, again, this is hanging way out the back of it. This is 27 foot long. You got to go up and down hills, around curves. So anyway, he had it fixed up so that it should all work well. He also had a neighbor friend bring his tractor over to help lift the load. He knew he couldn't lift it all by himself with his one tractor. And all actually did go well for a brief moment, and then the load shifted, and Scott's end with the small tractor was just not able to hold up the load, and it slipped off the forks. Lots of bent metal sheets. So a few more gyrations, and they got it onto the trailer, and the rest of the plan kind of went smoothly. It's all there next to the building, ready for Scott and I to unload it one sheet at a time. That's for tomorrow. And last week, Scott had picked up a different load of metal. These were shorter pieces that fit on the hay trailer, and he and I unloaded that without issue. And then yesterday, he laid out a bunch of sheets of those metal sheets onto some sawhorses. So even before going out to the road to meet the tow truck driver for the really long pieces, he discovered that the thunder I thought I heard last night was actually the wind blowing these large pieces of metal all over the place. More bent metal roof panels. You can't have everything go right every day. That just would not be real homestead living. Now, in the end, the roof will be completed and all will be well. I will have a long day tomorrow helping with the heavy lifting and moving those 27-foot sheets of metal off of the trailer and under the barn. Some of them will get moved to the roof as well. I expect my biceps and wrists to be sore again. But hey, that's one of the reasons we do what we do. No need to go to the gym. They're closed anyway. Daily life on the homestead is a workout that is never boring. So that roof is moving along quickly, and it's just so exciting to see that piece getting put in place. And that's it for this podcast. Trials and tribulations galore. If it ain't one thing, it's another. All in all, things are going well for us on the homestead at the present time. We say our prayers and thank God for our blessings. The animals are healthy. Well, except for that one quail. And we are healthy. I can't get enough of those quail. It looks like we finally have all the issues worked out. We are back to normal operations with everybody happy and content in their little homes. I just put a jar of pickled eggs out on the counter as an appetizer for tonight's dinner. Scott ate them all. The creamery is moving along at a good clip. It won't be long, and we will have finally realized that dream. Just another one of those blessings I'm always talking about. In the near future, I'm going to be updating the website to highlight our raw milk cheese herd shares. Look for updates on that next time. This year's cheeses are superb. They're the best I've ever made. If you regularly eat a pound or maybe 2 pounds of cheese per month, you might want to think about joining our herd share program. You can own a piece of the herd and dine on locally produced cheese that is out of this world. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hop over to Apple Podcast or whatever podcasting service you use. Subscribe. Give me a 5-star rating and a review. Help us out. If you like this content, want to help out the show, the best absolute way that you can do that is to share it with any friends or family who might be interested in this type of content. Let them know about the Peaceful Heart FarmCast. Share it to all your social media. Thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. And until next time, may God fill your life with grace and peace.